except little chunks of what appeared to be mushrooms.
That you would have selected death cap mushrooms without ascertaining how they would work upon your victims.
We're thankful that when things go wrong, there are good people and services.
On a Sunday afternoon in July 2023, 4 people sat down to a home-cooked lunch in a quiet Australian town. They were family. They trusted the woman who had cooked for them. By the following week, 3 of them were dead. The meal, beef Wellington. The weapon, a mushroom so deadly, just half a cap can shut down your liver in 48 hours. And the woman who served it, she claimed it was all a terrible accident. But here's what doesn't add up. She sent her own children out of the house before the meal. She ate from a different colored plate. She had secretly purchased a food dehydrator weeks earlier, and when police asked if she had foraged for mushrooms, she lied. This is the story of Erin Patterson, Australia's most talked about murder trial of the century. And by the end of the video, you'll understand exactly how an ordinary Sunday lunch became one of the most calculated crimes in Australian history. To understand what happened on July 29th, 2023, you need to understand the world Erin Patterson lived in. Leongatha is a small rural town about 130 kilometers southeast of Melbourne. It's the kind of place where people know their neighbors, where family is everything, and where a Sunday lunch invitation is just a Sunday lunch. Erin Patterson was 49 years old. She was a mother of 2, estranged from her husband, Simon Patterson, and by most outward appearances, a completely ordinary woman. Soft-spoken, thoughtful, the type of person nobody ever suspected of anything. That July, she extended a lunch invitation to 5 people: her estranged in-laws, Don and Gail Patterson, Gail's sister, Heather Wilkinson, Heather's husband, Ian Wilkinson, and her estranged husband, Simon, himself. Simon declined. He said he wasn't comfortable attending given the state of their relationship. That decision, that one small, uncomfortable no, almost certainly saved his life. The 4 who did come sat down that Sunday to individual beef Wellington pastries, homemade, beautifully presented, and on the surface, completely generous. They ate, they chatted, they went home, and then everything fell apart. By the next morning, Monday, all 4 guests were violently ill. The kind of sick that doesn't feel like food poisoning. The kind of sick that sends you to a hospital. Don Patterson, Gail Patterson, Heather Wilkinson, Ian Wilkinson, all hospitalized within 24 hours of that lunch. The culprit, death cap mushrooms. Amanita phalloides, one of the most lethal fungi on the planet. They're responsible for the majority of fatal mushroom poisonings worldwide. And what makes them so terrifying is this: the symptoms don't always begin immediately. You might feel okay for the first few hours, but by the time your liver starts failing, it's already too late. Don and Gail Patterson, Erin's former in-laws, died within days. Heather Wilkinson died shortly after. 3 people gone within a week of eating lunch. Ian Wilkinson survived, but barely. He later testified that after eating about 2/3 of the cake he and Heather had brought along, he self-induced vomiting. That reflex, that stomach churning, horrible decision, is likely what kept him alive. Now here's what should have happened next. Erin Patterson should have been called to the hospital, should have told doctors immediately that she may have used foraged mushrooms, should have handed over every ingredient, every piece of evidence. Instead, she started making things disappear. Stay with me, because what she did in the 72 hours after that lunch is where this story goes from tragic to chilling. While her in-laws lay dying in hospital, Erin Patterson was busy. She told hospital staff she had used a mix of mushrooms, some from a local supermarket chain, and said nothing about any foraged wild mushrooms. When police asked if she had ever foraged for mushrooms herself, she said no, a flat-out lie that she would eventually admit to on the stand. She had purchased a food dehydrator months before the lunch. In late April 2023, when police came looking, it was gone. She had dumped it in a skip bin at a waste transfer station in Coonawarra. But they found it anyway, and when they tested it, it contained traces of death cap mushrooms. Her phone was factory reset. Images she had taken of mushrooms she had foraged deleted. Remember I told you there were 4 deceptions the prosecution laid out? Here they are. The prosecution alleged 4 calculated acts. First, she used a fabricated cancer story as the pretense for the lunch invitation. She had told her in-laws she had cancer. She didn't. She was actually planning weight loss surgery but was too embarrassed to admit it. Second, she secretly laced the beef Wellington with lethal doses of death cap mushrooms. Third, she tried to make it seem like she was also sick to deflect suspicion. And fourth, the sustained, deliberate cover-up that followed. But here's the question the entire trial would hinge on. All of this really have been an accident? Could one woman really make all of these mistakes innocently? We'll get to that. But first, let's talk about the mushrooms themselves. Death cap mushrooms, Amanita phalloides, look almost harmless. A pale, yellowish green cap, white gills, completely unremarkable to the untrained eye. But half a single cap contains enough amatoxin to kill an adult human. It works by attacking the liver and kidneys, destroying cells from the inside out. Symptoms can begin anywhere from 6 to 24 hours after ingestion. Nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain. Then there's a deceptive false recovery period where the person feels better. Then organ failure sets in. By the time a doctor knows what they're dealing with, the damage is often irreversible. There is no specific antidote. The mushrooms are not native to Australia. They were accidentally introduced from Europe and now grow in certain parts of Victoria, particularly in areas with oak trees. And here is the critical detail the prosecution hammered home. Erin Patterson's phone records placed her in the vicinity of known death cap mushroom locations in April and May of 2023, the same day she purchased that dehydrator. She had found them, she had harvested them, she had dried them, and she had baked them into a meal for her in-laws. The trial began on April 29th, 2025, almost 2 years after the lunch, at the Supreme Court of Victoria in Morwell, the small town Erin herself had requested the trial be held in rather than Melbourne. It became, in the words of British magazine The Spectator, Australia's trial of the century. Journalists flew in from around the world. Daily podcasts tracking proceedings attracted millions of listeners. It consumed the country. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. They painted Erin Patterson as a calculating woman who had carefully planned every step. The iNaturalist website, a citizen science app, had mapped the locations of death cap mushroom sightings in the region. The prosecution alleged she used those maps. She drove to 2 separate locations. She picked the mushrooms. She dried them using her dehydrator. She ground them into the dish. The defense, led by Colin Mandy SC, argued this was all a terrible, tragic accident, that Erin had foraged mushrooms without knowing what they were, that she had lied, yes, but out of panic, not guilt. As a mother with 2 children, a home, financial stability, and a place at nursing school had no reason to kill anyone. They questioned the reliability of witness memories. They said her interest searches for death cap mushrooms reflected nothing more than, as they put it, idle curiosity. They said there was no motive, but the jury didn't buy it. And when you hear the detail about the plates, you'll understand exactly why. Ian Wilkinson, the sole survivor, testified to something that stopped the courtroom cold. He said that when Erin served the meal, all 4 guests received their beef Wellington on large, grey plates. But Erin herself ate from a different plate, a different color, orange, tan. Why does that matter? Because if this truly was an accident, if Erin genuinely didn't know those mushrooms were in the food, there would be no reason to eat from a separate plate. There would be no reason to ensure she was not eating the same thing she had served her guests. The defense tried to dismiss it. They said it was irrelevant. Perhaps she just had a different plate because she ate less or ate differently. But the judge, Justice Christopher Bale, accepted Ian Wilkinson's account as credible in his sentencing remarks. He said the separate plate was used to ensure Erin did not accidentally eat the poison meal herself. She knew exactly what was in those pastries, and she made sure none of it ended up in her own mouth. Erin Patterson took the stand in her own defense. For days, she answered questions from both her own lawyers and the prosecution. She admitted to the lies, the dehydrator, the deleted photos, the cancer story. She called her decision to dump the dehydrator a stupid, knee-jerk reaction to just dig deeper and keep lying. She testified that she had foraged mushrooms, yes, but had no idea they were deadly. She said she panicked when her guests fell ill and didn't know what to do. She said she'd never intended to hurt anyone. At one point, she recounted a conversation at the hospital with her estranged husband, Simon. She claimed that during that visit, Simon had asked her, "Is that how you poisoned my parents?" Simon denied ever saying that. The jury listened. They deliberated for about 6 days after a 10-week trial with more than 50 witnesses. On July 7th, 2025, they returned their verdict. Guilty on 3 counts of murder. Guilty on 1 count of attempted murder. The jury rejected every word of her defense. On September 8th, 2025, Justice Bale sentenced Erin Patterson to life in prison. 3 life sentences for the 3 murders, to be served concurrently. A 25-year sentence for the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson, and a non-parole period of 33 years. She will be 81 years old before she can ever be considered for release. In his sentencing remarks, Justice Bale said something remarkable. He said he believed that if Simon Patterson had accepted his invitation to lunch that day, he too would have been killed. The judge said she had also intended to kill her husband. 28 victim impact statements were submitted to the court. 7 were read publicly. The grief of the community of Corumbra, where all the victims had lived, was laid out in devastating detail. Patterson showed no remorse, Bale said. Remember the 4 deceptions the prosecution outlined? The jury found all of them proven beyond reasonable doubt. But the story doesn't quite end there. In October 2025, prosecutors appealed the sentence, calling it manifestly inadequate. They had argued she should never be eligible for parole at all. That appeal is still working its way through the system. Even with a guilty verdict and a life sentence, there are things about this case that linger. Why? That's the question Justice Bale himself said he would not speculate on. There was no clean, simple motive present. Her marriage was broken down, but she wasn't destitute. She had her children. She had a future. There's also the matter of her estranged husband, Simon, who had been hospitalized 3 times between 2021 and 2022 with severe gastrointestinal symptoms. The second time so serious he fell into a coma and required life-saving surgery. A medical expert commissioned for the trial found those symptoms were consistent with the ingestion of barium carbonate, an ingredient in rat poison. Those details were suppressed during the murder trial itself. Simon was never poisoned in any charge that went to trial, but the picture those details paint, the repeated hospitalizations, the mysterious symptoms, the near death of her own husband before the lunch, adds a layer of darkness to this story that may never be fully explained in a court of law. What was she trying to achieve? Was this about a messy divorce? A property settlement? Control? Anger? Grief? We may never truly know, and that is perhaps the most unsettling part of all. Don Patterson, Gail Patterson, Heather Wilkinson. 3 people who accepted a lunch invitation from someone they trusted. 3 people who sat down at a table believing they were among family. 3 people who didn't go home. Ian Wilkinson survived. He sat through an entire 10-week trial, reliving the worst moments of his life, testifying against the woman who tried to kill him. He is the reason we know about the plates. Erin Patterson will spend the next 3 decades in a prison cell. Whether that is justice for the 3 people who died, that's something only the families left behind can answer. Australia called this the trial of the century, and in many ways it was, not because of its complexity, but because of its simplicity. A Sunday lunch, a home-cooked meal, and a choice that 3 people never knew was made on their behalf. If you found this video worthwhile, please subscribe. There are more stories like this one coming, and leave a comment below. Do you think the sentence was enough? Should she ever be eligible for parole? I'll see you in the next one.